Do you remember the dark side of Red Riding Hood? Just like Yanderella, which I covered previously, this was a game that I hadn't played in my youth, like I had with Mad Father and Misao, which I've also covered. The dark side of Red Riding Hood was a game I was merely aware of. I didn't play it until I felt like making this video, since it was also made by the creator of Yanderella, Charon. And when I did eventually play this game, I was quite shocked at the gratuitous violence and dark themes that the game covers in an almost haphazard way. I really enjoyed Yanderella for what it was, a funny Yandere-centered game with an ahead of its time plot twist, which I think was quite interesting. Whilst this game, despite also being created by Charon, just feels like a lot of horrendous stuff is shown for shock value and nothing much more. But right now, I am getting ahead of myself, so let me just give you a brief rundown of the gameplay, the plot, all its endings, and what they all mean. Just like Yanderella previously, this game is also an RPG Maker horror game with a twist on a classic Brothers Grimm tale. Yanderella was of course based around Cinderella, and the dark side of Red Riding Hood is pretty self-explanatorily based off Little Red Riding Hood. You play as the titular Red Riding Hood, but the word play is in kind of quotation marks here, as the gameplay itself, whilst it is clearly in the RPG Maker engine, it is really bare bones, with even less interactivity than Yanderella. The only real gameplay is the player moving in the 4 cardinal directions. That is literally it. You just use the arrow keys to navigate the path to Grandma's house. Beyond that, all you'll do with any semblance of interactivity is saving the game, interacting with a couple objects in the world to just get little item descriptions and stuff, and just pushing the confirm key to go through text boxes. Unlike Yanderella, you don't decide which ending you get through choosing dialogue options. You don't choose what to say to your grandmother or to your mother or anyone else who may show up. Whilst this game has around 6 endings, they are decided through which paths you literally take when moving around the game towards Grandma's house. Choosing which path to take decides which ending you get, most endings being more depressing and or gruesome than the last. Since the game mechanically overall is very simple, you can get all the game's endings in less than an hour, which is saying a lot since Yanderella, which was a similarly simple game, mechanically speaking, you could get that game's 3 endings in a couple hours too. But this game is really short, so if you're in a weird mood, I'll leave a link in the description for you to download it. So, spoilers ahead, if you want to go play the game, play it now. But in regards to the gameplay, there isn't much left to say. It's a very simple game, so let's talk about the more complex and more intriguing parts of these sorts of games, the story. This game's initial concept from the plot it's based on is very easy to grasp. It is very much a retelling of the tale of Little Red Riding Hood. However, this version is darker and more messed up, and it's kind of just as simple as that. Nothing really complex. You play as Little Red Riding Hood, as I say, on a quest from her mother. She needs to go through this forest and stay on the path to get to her grandmother's house, because if she strays from the path towards her grandmother's house, she may come across the big bad wolf who will gobble her up. Since the story is this simple, I'm going to go through each of the game's endings and then discuss why I feel kind of strange about this game overall. But with that being said, let's get into the endings, and also don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror stuff. I don't really say that often enough, and I should. Like and subscribe, please, I beg. Ending number 1. You follow the path, you listen to your mother's wishes, you merely follow the path in front of you, merely going from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen without moving off the beaten path. You walk through the forest and you get to your grandmother's house. Nothing seems out of the ordinary, but given the context we gather from the other endings, this ending is much less harmonious than it seems on the surface. We follow our mother's orders, we arrive at Grandma's house, and that's it. But there's a reason the game calls this a bad end. Ending number 2. In this ending, you take the first fork in the road. Instead of merely following the path in front of you, you follow this new path. And eventually, Little Red Riding Hood will come across a flower field with some yellow flowers in the middle. She picks the flowers and continues her journey towards her grandmother's house. Night begins to fall as she reaches her grandma's house. However, for some reason, Red Riding Hood, seeing that flower field, changes what she does upon seeing her grandmother. Instead of merely visiting her grandmother, she takes an axe to her, cleaving her apart. Yet again, we may understand a little bit more about Red Riding Hood's actions and reasoning here for killing her grandmother the more endings we go through. Ending number 3. All of these endings in the game, as I say, are dictated by which path you take, and I mean this in the most literal sense. You follow the path, you get the first ending. You take the first fork in the road, you get the second ending. And in this case, you take the second fork in the road, you get the third ending. In this ending, Red Riding Hood wanders the forest after leaving the path her mother set her on, and during this excursion, Red Riding Hood comes across an empty lake that she cannot cross, and when she attempts to get back to the path towards her grandmother's house, she fails. Getting lost in the forest, she wanders and wanders around the forest. The sun sets and night eventually falls upon the woods. Red Riding Hood grows hungry. Out of curiosity, she opens a basket given to her by her mother that she's supposed to deliver to see if there's any food that she can eat just to last her until she makes it back to the path on her way to her grandmother's. But upon opening the basket, Red Riding Hood discovers that the basket given to her by her mother was merely filled with rocks. She is left with nothing to eat, all alone in the forest, and she was never seen again. This means either Red Riding Hood's mother never expected her to reach her grandmother's place, or maybe she was bringing food to her grandmother in a different sense and Red Riding Hood just didn't know it. Ending number 4. On the new path that Red Riding Hood takes on the way to her grandmother's house, she doesn't come across a field of flowers or an empty lake or anything like that. She comes across a man, alone in the forest cutting down trees. A hunter, as he is titled. He asks Red Riding Hood where she's going. He warns Red Riding Hood of the big bad wolf in the area, so she should be careful. By the time we get to Grandma's house, it's nighttime. Grandma has been killed, with the hunter from earlier inside of her house near her corpse. He reveals to us that he never really clarified what it is he actually hunts. He says he hunts down little brats like Red Riding Hood. He then proceeds to pin her down and tells her to do as he says. She's his slave now, and if she wants to live, she needs to do everything she's told. It just ends with Red Riding Hood being assaulted next to her grandmother's corpse. Lovely. Ending number 5. In this ending, Red Riding Hood, of course, takes a different path. The most uneventful path. We don't come across anyone or anything. It's merely an empty forest. But taking this path has caused it to be nightfall before we even get to Grandma's house. When we walk in, we get the classic speech from the big bad wolf to Little Red Riding Hood. Oh, what big ears you have. What big eyes you have. What big hands you have. And what a big mouth you have. Until we are met with this image of our so-called grandmother. It then cuts to what is seemingly our grandmother eating Little Red Riding Hood. The dialogue suggests that Red Riding Hood's mother has been sending girls to this grandmother consistently for her to eat. Grandma then starts to wonder what the next Red Riding Hood's meat will taste like. This ending is maybe an explanation as to why Red Riding Hood kills her mother in the second ending, as well as why the hunter kills Red Riding Hood's grandmother, as he wants the girls for himself, not for them to be eaten by her grandma. It also explains why there were rocks in the basket of food for the starvation ending. Red Riding Hood's mother never intended for her to come back from her grandmother's place. She knew she would be eaten. Ending number 6. In the final ending of the game, it's not the true ending or anything, it's just the last ending available, Little Red Riding Hood, of course, takes another detour. This time she comes across a lake with 2 swans floating on top of it. But then as Red Riding Hood continues her journey to her grandmother's house, rain begins to pour and pour down, and so does nightfall. When she gets there, she doesn't find her grandmother. She finds a strange man. He asks if this is Red Riding Hood. He states that he paid our mother a pretty penny for us, and as a result, we are now his slave. For the rest of our lives. We are going to be working and doing things so horrendous we will wish we were dead. But we will be working for him till the day we die, since our mother sold us. And that's all 6 of this game's endings. Overall, the game and the subject matter that it covers feels like something kind of like Tokyo Red Hood or the Winnie the Pooh horror movie, right? Where people try to take something childlike and innocent and contort it. And the only way they can imagine to do so is to make it the exact polar opposite of its original version. Instead of a little girl going to her grandmother's house to visit, the girl's actually there to kill her grandmother. Or the girl gets deliciously assaulted, or the girl gets sold into slavery, or the grandma eats the girl. It feels very one-dimensional for the most part to me. And these very gruesome and depressing subjects are just kind of used for shock value, which is such a shame, because I really enjoyed how much Yanderella felt like a much more creative game with its idea of contorting a well-established trope with the Yandere in a visual novel through making it self-aware of the player. Here, it just feels like hollow shock value. What if we made Red Riding Hood and it was super dark and messed up? Like, there doesn't feel like there's much more to it than that, unfortunately. I appreciate it for what it is. It is a short and intriguing game, riffing on the classic Brothers Grimm tale, and it does so through shock value and making the situation as depraved as possible. It's very surface level, with not too much to discuss, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad game. It just means it's nothing insanely deep, and that's okay. Yes, it covers topics that I don't think are merited to shock the viewer, and they do come so out of left field that they do their job. It did shock me upon my first time playing through all the endings. But on the flip side of that, some of the endings were so far out of left field, it kind of made me chuckle, to be honest. Hello, Red Riding Hood. Hello. You have been sold into slavery, Red Riding Hood. What? Like, it's so abrupt and out of left field. I won't lie, that specific ending accidentally got a giggle from me, which I very much doubt was intentional from Charon. In conclusion, though, there is one thing about the story that is kind of worthy of note, and did intrigue me a little bit beyond the shock value. Despite being centered around the fable of Little Red Riding Hood, this game has no actual big bad wolf, per se. The character of the big bad wolf is split between the characters of the grandmother and the hunter. The grandmother is the creature going around eating little girls, and the hunter, similar to the fable, kills the wolf, / grandma in this case, whilst also at the same time he's also acting as an animal that preys on little girls and the weak just as much as the big bad wolf did in the actual story. But even with that intriguing little tidbit, I still believe that the game covers topics that I don't think it needs to. It's just shock horror for the sake of it, with seemingly not too much depth to the overall narrative that is being told. But yeah, that was the dark side of Red Riding Hood. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, but with that being said, doodles my doodles, hopefully see you in the next one. Peace.